You've arrived at eMoney 105 Decision Center, and you can probably tell by my voice, I get fired up here. This is the part of eMoney that to me, it just sets the world on fire. This is where we get to help clients make informed financial decisions. I could tell you story after story of clients that have come in my office, that I'm working with them or I'm on Zoom, and we've sat there in Decision Center and they broke down in tears because they finally understand their financial plan. They finally understand where they're going that they never understood before they talked to us, before we ran it through them. I highly encourage you to be a first-rate version of yourself and not a second-rate version of me. Present the way that works for you and your clients. But with that being said, I'm going to show you the principles that have worked for us. It's been a time-tested strategy, and I hope this will help you present to clients better. So let's dive right into it. So we've spent all this time building out plans, understanding plans, and ultimately what it comes down to is we got to present this in a manner that our clients understand. Not something that's a bunch of hieroglyphics or Greek or things that they can't understand. Not things that they walk away and say, well, you know what? That Greg, he's pretty smart. Seems like you know what he's talking about. Let's just do what he has to say. No, I want clients to take ownership of what we're talking about. So when we come under plans, everything that we're building out ultimately comes down to Decision Center. So as I'm presenting to the client, once we've gotten past their base facts and we've talked to them about the simple parts of base facts of like, hey, this is what this is we presented to you. And we start going through the other 5 areas of financial planning, right? We start going through protection planning. We start going through retirement planning. We start going through investment planning. We start going through estate planning. We start going through tax planning. We want to be inside Decision Center. So let's click a Decision Center. And we want to get used to the language I tell us to clients all the time. Base facts versus alternatives. Base facts versus alternative. Base facts is what you're doing without ever talking to me. Base facts is like scientific testing. And what I always want to do when I come in here is I want to be in Monte Carlo and then Monte Carlo summary. Because I want it to be as simple as possible for these clients to understand. Mr. and Mrs. Client. And I've already explained probability of success to them. Or they've been my client for a while. And this is how we do every client review meeting. It sets up with this. Based upon what you're currently doing, we project you have a 91% probability of success. Or you might want to say it, a 91% probability of not having to change. Now, I want you to understand that this involves up markets and down markets. We're using Monte Carlo. And however you want to explain Monte Carlo, go back to the first one, how I explain it to them. But I always say, Mr. and Mrs. Client, we're testing based upon the past history of these asset classes, what they've done. I can't predict the markets, but we can plan for the markets. I don't want them to, I wish I could get rid of all this on the screen. If I can get rid of this thing here, I try to hide this number, like 238 million, that's just absurd. They don't need to see that. Yes, you go to present value, but a lot of times I'll actually zoom in on my screen. I have a touch screen monitor for that reason, to make it easy for me to zoom in. I don't know how to use the mouse pad really well. I know some other people are really good at that. But I love to have it zoomed in because this is the star of the show. Mr. and Mrs. Client, just as a reminder, 0 to 69, it's the come to Jesus talk. You got to pray for a miracle. You really have to make substantial changes. You've come in, you're 300 pounds overweight, your cholesterol's high. We need a more advanced plan to get you to where you need to be. 0 is you can retire, but as a CFP professional, I don't feel comfortable telling you can retire. Maybe you want to take that risk level. When you get over 82%, that's when I green light you. I say as a CFP professional, I feel comfortable with you pursuing your goals, doing what you're currently doing. When you get above 90%, I consider that a high probability of success. It's a Mendoza line. Mendoza was a Pittsburgh Pirate. I'm from Pittsburgh that played in Major League Baseball. I love baseball references. And he had the lowest batting average that's ever existed in baseball history. So the idea is to stay in the big leagues, stay in the majors, you have to bat over the Mendoza batting average. So it's a line of disparcation. And so really when we look at this, when we have 90%, when I test things for you, Mr. and Mrs. Client, when I test for this, there's a chance that you'll still be successful. Great work, right? One of the things I'll tell them too is if they are successful and they're in green, like this particular sample client, your hard work has got you here. They've been working with me 10 or 15 years. There's nothing I did. I can't be with you when you're making decisions outside this office. All my goal is to help guide you to where you want to go. But ultimately, you and your husband or you and your wife, you put the hard work in. You raised 2 or 3 children and you saved the money, not me. You're the one to decide to keep your money in the market and down markets, not me. All I've simply been as a guide to you. Hats off to you. Congratulations to you. Always make them the hero of this show. If you're not familiar with Don Miller Story Brand, make sure you're using that language. But we're going to go here to base facts, and we're going to drop this down. And this is where I'll pull up our alternatives. And this is where I'm just going to come in here and I'll say, Mr. and Mrs. Client, we always want to test for things, and we're going to turn these all off because this is a sample client. A lot of times I have stuff turned on and off. So we'll scroll up to here. One of the things we always test for is, Mr. and Mrs. Client, now it's great that you have a 91%. If things stay the same and stay with our projections, what if there's a major market downturn that was greater than what we've already tested for? What if this is the quote unquote big one? And depending on an engineer client or non-engineer client, I'll explain to what I'm testing for here. We do 1 year -20. And I talk to you, tell them blue in the face why we use that. I know it's debatable in our profession. But Mr. and Mrs. Client, so your probability of having to change things in your life are going to have to change. So if this happened, what would we change? Right? And we might have a button on here that says maybe they go back to work part-time, or maybe they spend less. That's the change we have to make. Or are you comfortable in that scenario? There's a 100-year flood and a 1,000-year flood. We're in a 1,000-year flood. Are you comfortable with being in this range? That might turn us off and on. What if we had a major increase in living expenses? Right? Whether it's inflation, whether it's you spending like a drunken sailor, or however you want to present it to the client. Mr. or Mrs. Client, let's look at what this is. Now, sometimes we might forget what that is, and we go and we click up here, and it's going to take us right into, see how there's this little thing? We can go right into here, and we can also change this interactively. And this is a sample client, so it's actually incorrect on here. So let's just go and put this at 120,000. And 120,000. As I'm always playing around in these. And again, I'll do this interactive with a client. A lot of times I might even say major living expense and put the amount depending on a particular client. But what if it got worse? This is that interactive. I love interactive planning. What if this happened? I'm glad you asked. Because not only do I love it just because it's fun, not only do I love it because I know that it's impacting, but that means that they're truly engaged in the planning process. When they ask you questions, there's engagement there. And you can see, like, look, this is what happens here. What if we did that and we changed our portfolio to the recommended allocation? What if we did that and we turned on our social, let's just turn on a rider on their annuity? And this is a sample client. I would have all these things built out. What if we purchased a house? What if we sold our house? What if we went into a long-term care event? What if we did this? And see, what we are able to do is interactively turn these things on and off. And you can see how you can have a rich conversation for hours inside of here. You can build out different buttons. Really quickly go in here and modify techniques. What I encourage people on our team is, if you don't know this software well enough, don't build these out in person. Say, can I get back to you with that answer? Because it's a ripple effect with cash flow software. There's times where you do one little thing wrong, and then you really, and I've been in a situation, by the way, where I'm like, I kind of know, like, if you save more money, your plan's gonna look better, and then all of a sudden it went down. I did something wrong. And man, you want to lose some trust really quickly with a client, or make a client frustrated. They're trying to have this conversation with their spouse, or trying to have a conversation, make a decision with you, and you're like, my software is incorrect. I just need 10 minutes. And I trust me, I'm telling you from experience, not from a hypothetical. I've been there, so I'm very careful when I build out stuff in front of clients. I really want to know that plan very confidently, especially if you're not the person that's doing all the data input. Make sure that you're using and leveraging your team or whoever else it is that helps you build out the plans, and come back to the client and build out these scenarios. You know, you can never have too many buttons in here. Have more buttons built out, but you need to be able to navigate the basics of this and understand this. And so what you can see inside here, this is the hearts and brains of eMoney. This is the part you want to be in. Now, there is another part of Monte Carlo that I really love, and especially with this client, Mr. and Mrs. Client, we're talking about the probability of having to change our decisions, right? Probability of having to change our plan. It's a 73, it's in yellow. But there's a longevity piece in here. And so we can click on this Monte Carlo summary. And I do love to pull up this longevity risk. I think it's one of the most innovative features eMoney's done in the last 5 or 6 years, in my opinion. But we're going to come in here, and they have this confidence age, and I think this is great. They have this, what this values mean. That, to me, is not the meaningful, in my opinion. I love the fact that they did green, 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 and yellow. So what we can see is Mr. and Mrs. Client, what if in our advanced years we lowered the spending, right? Probability of having to change our spending patterns. What if we change the longevity around? But I really think this is impactful, is that we can come in here and we can start to see at what age, and we can say, Mr. and Mrs. Client, you can see, look, you were at 100% probability of success, 100%, 99, 99. And what happened is, and you can come down here, to me, you can show us the cash flow report. You know, just show the assets going down on a cash flow report. To me, this makes a lot more sense. What's the probability of one of you living to this age versus both of you living to this age? Because this is the one, you know, typically men die earlier. If you go to a nursing home, it's mostly females. My wife will tell you it's because us men, we make dumb decisions. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's something in our DNA. But a lot of times, men tend to also be this like risk taker, whether or not they want to act this way. I don't know if it's something that's innate in them, and they'll be like, well, I'll be fine, I'll be dead. Hey, you might be dead, but she might still be living. And I want you to look her in the eyes and say, you're okay with this plan doing that way. And then he'll start to say, well, I guess you're right. Right, so I think this is a really, really great conversation to have about probability of success dropping as we get older. And what if we added more years on here longevity-wise? So again, I think this is really good, and I think it can also scroll right back up, and you can see it go from green to yellow to red and see the different areas inside of there. So again, I like green, I like yellow, I like red. Clients like things that are simple. Clients like things that they can understand, something you can show them clearly. And what you can see here is the way we present this plan. I think that most people can understand this. What if I did this? What's the results? Because that's ultimately what financial planning is. Financial planning is trying to help a client to pursue their goals, to make decisions based upon the goals they want to achieve. Not what you think is mathematically the best thing for them, not what you think is in their best interest, but understanding the cause and effect of pursuing their goals. I hired a lawyer the one time that wanted to tell me what to do. I fired him very quickly. I hired a different lawyer that said, Greg, if you do this, this is the potential outcomes. If you do this, these are the potential outcomes. Here's my recommendation, but here's the understanding of the why. That's the type of approach we're trying to take to financial planning. And that's why I encourage you as much as possible, be in Decision Center, be in a Monte Carlo, be in this drop down here to asset allocation, to asset Monte Carlo summary, because I think this is where it makes sense to clients. Turn these buttons on and off. Yes, there are times where you need to show them a report. I've talked about the granddaddy of them all, cash flow. We use income tax a lot with clients. We use asset allocation a lot with clients, right? There's just times where I just want to pick off this one area. And what eMoney is getting really great at too is they keep adding more and more of those, right? So you can actually drop down the income tax inside of here. You can drop down and do things inside of here. You don't have to go, and just to show you right here, there's great things inside of taxes. There's great things inside of investments. So you don't have to go into reports. The more and more you can stay inside of one interactive area and being able to push these buttons on and off, it's huge. So when you're presenting a client, my recommendation is somebody to believe is a power user of eMoney, that we use it with every single client, is to spend your time in Decision Center and spend it in a Monte Carlo summary. More coming in our next one. I'm going to show you other ways that we explain other things to clients. We're going to dive a little bit into estate planning, talk about that. That's fun to show you some of the tools inside of here. We're going to show you income taxes, show you some of the tools inside of here. We're going to show you the ways that you can present your plan to your client.